Hello everyone, and welcome back to my workshop. Today, I'm making a unique wooden ashtray from walnut. The ashtray will be built from 2 pieces of walnut wood. The thinner piece will become the lid, and the thicker one will form the base. The inspiration for this project came from a birthday celebration I attended. On the table, I noticed a beautiful ceramic ashtray. Its shape and simplicity stayed in my mind, and I thought, why not bring that idea into the world of wood turning? So today, I'll recreate that ceramic form, but in solid walnut, giving it warmth, character, and a handmade touch. I begin the project with the bottom part of the ashtray. To hold it securely, I mount a thicker piece of walnut onto the lathe using a screw chuck. This gives me a strong grip and allows me to work on the outside shape with confidence. For the first cuts, I reach for the spindle gouge. This tool is ideal for creating smooth curves and refining contours, and it gives me control over the form I want to achieve. With steady passes, I start removing material and shaping the basic outline of the ashtray's base. At this early stage, it's about creating balance and flow. I want the ashtray to feel stable, but also elegant, not too heavy, yet solid enough to sit firmly on a table. As I work, the walnut reveals its grain, dark, flowing patterns that swirl across the surface. Each cut not only shapes the form, but also brings more of this natural beauty into view. Already, I can imagine how the lid and base will fit together to form a complete piece. To refine the surface even further, I will soon switch to a scraper. The scraper allows me to smooth out any tool marks left by the gouge, leaving a much cleaner finish. The smoother I can make the wood at this stage, the less sanding I'll need to do later, and that saves both time and effort. It's all about preparation. The more care I put into these early cuts, the more refined and elegant the finished ashtray will be. With the scraper in hand, I now begin smoothing the surface of the walnut. This tool is perfect for taking out the small ridges and irregularities left behind by the gouge. It doesn't remove large chips, but instead shaves the surface in fine layers, almost polishing as it cuts. A scraper only works properly when it's sharpened the right way. After grinding the edge, I raise a small burr on the steel, a fine hook that actually does the cutting. That tiny burr slices the wood fibers cleanly, leaving a surface that feels much smoother to the touch. Each steady pass evens out the curves of the base, reducing the sanding I'll need later and preparing the piece for the next stage of turning. I continue refining the bottom part of the ashtray with the scraper, making sure the curves are smooth and the surface is as even as possible. Next, I prepare a recess that will later allow me to grip the piece securely with the chuck jaws. For this step, I switch to a different scraper, a square-edged tool measuring 30 millimeters by 8. With its flat, robust profile, it's perfect for cutting a clean, straight-sided opening. This recess doesn't need to be very deep, but it must be accurate because it will determine how firmly the base is held during the following stages of turning. To finish, I take a skew chisel and add a very slight taper to the recess. This tiny angled cut ensures that the chuck jaws will seat more securely, giving me a stronger hold and preventing the piece from slipping once I begin hollowing the inside. Before moving on, I add a small decorative touch to the recess where the chuck jaws will grip the piece. With the spindle gouge, I cut a fine detail line, turning what is usually a purely functional area into something more pleasing to the eye. It doesn't change the strength of the hold, but it breaks up the plain surface and gives the base a bit of character. Even in hidden or technical parts, I like to leave a personal mark, small details that make the piece feel more refined and intentional. With the shaping complete, I now move on to sanding the base. I start with 180 grit sandpaper, which removes the tool marks and evens out the surface. From there, I progressed to 240 grit, further refining the texture, and finally, I finished with 400 grit, leaving the walnut silky smooth to the touch. Each step makes the wood feel more alive, as the grain becomes clearer and the surface more polished. Sanding might look simple, but it's one of the most important stages. It's here that the piece truly begins to reveal its final character. The better the sanding, the more depth and warmth the walnut will show once the finish is applied. With the sanding finished, I move on to applying the finish. For this, I use our own blend, a mixture of carnauba, wax, and tung oil. Carnauba wax is made from the leaves of the Brazilian palm and is known as the hardest natural wax. It melts only at high temperatures, around 80 degrees Celsius, which makes it extremely durable and resistant to wear. It provides the surface with a smooth sheen and protection against scratches. Tung oil, on the other hand, penetrates deeply into the wood fibers and hardens within them, creating a natural barrier that repels moisture. It's been used for centuries as one of the best oils for preserving wood, giving strength and long-lasting durability. Together, this blend protects the ashtray while bringing out the rich, dark tones and striking grain of the walnut. It's a finish we make ourselves, and if you'd like to try it, you can find it available both on our website and in our Etsy shop under the name Pipejawood. With the outside and bottom of the ashtray complete, I now turn my attention to the inside. The first step is to true up the rim. Using the spindle gouge, I carefully level the top edge so it's flat and even. This gives me a clean reference point and ensures that the lid will later sit nicely on the base. Each light pass with the gouge shaves away the uneven fibers, leaving the walnut sharp and crisp along the rim. Once the rim is straight and clean, I switch to the bowl gouge, 16 millimeters wide. With it, I begin to hollow the interior. The bowl gouge lets me remove material efficiently while still shaping flowing curves. Each pass cuts deeper into the walnut, slowly opening up the inside of the ashtray. When the first hollowing passes are done, I take a moment to measure and mark the exact diameter where the lid will eventually sit. This is a very important step. The fit between the base and the lid must be precise. If it's too tight, the lid will be difficult to remove. And if it's too loose, it won't look or feel right. Careful measuring now ensures a smooth connection later. With the markings in place, I switch to a flat scraper. The scraper allows me to refine the hollowing, evening out the walls, and removing any roughness left behind by the gouge. It doesn't cut deeply, but instead shaves thin layers from the surface, gradually bringing the cavity to its proper depth and diameter. Finally, I use the bowl gouge again to shape a raised section in the center. This feature prevents ashes from lifting out if there's a breeze. I carefully form the gentle rise in the middle, while the outer walls slope down evenly around it. It takes time and patience, but step by step, the interior of the ashtray takes shape. The walnut grain reveals new patterns with every cut, giving life and character to the curves I'm carving inside. I always find this stage fascinating, the moment when a simple block of wood begins to transform into something truly functional. What was once rough and heavy now feels refined, with a design that is both practical and elegant. This is also where the project becomes more personal. Each curve is guided by my hands and tools, and no two pieces ever turn out exactly the same. The raised core, the slope of the walls, even the subtle flow of the grain, all of it makes this ashtray one of a kind. And I'd love to hear your thoughts so far. Do you enjoy this combination of function and design? How do you feel about the raised center and the overall shape of the interior? Let me know in the comments below. Your feedback not only helps me improve, but also gives me ideas for future projects. With the shaping of the inside complete, I now move on to sanding the interior surfaces. Just like on the outside, I progress step by step through the grits, starting coarse enough to remove tool marks and then moving finer and finer until the walnut feels perfectly smooth to the touch. For this, I'm using sanding papers from Klingspor, which provide consistent quality and make the process more efficient. Sanding the inside takes patience, especially around the raised center, but it's worth the effort. The cleaner the surface here, the more elegant the finished ashtray will look. Once the sanding is finished, I apply our own Pipejawood wood finish, a blend of natural carnauba wax and tung oil. This mixture is something we make ourselves, and it's available both on our website and in our Etsy shop. The carnauba wax gives a durable sheen, while the tung oil penetrates deep into the fibers, strengthening and protecting the wood from the inside out. As the finish is applied, the walnut comes alive, the colors deepen, the grain gains contrast, and the entire piece takes on a warm, natural glow. Now it's time to begin shaping the lid of the ashtray. To mount it securely on the chuck jaws, I first drill a hole using a 55mm Forstner bit. This gives me a clean and accurate opening that allows the jaws to grip the wood firmly without slipping. Once the piece is held in place, I start by leveling the inside surface with a flat scraper. This ensures that the bottom of the lid is smooth and ready to fit precisely on the base later. With the inner surface trued up, I switch to the spindle gouge and begin roughing the outside. Step by step, I bring the block into a cylindrical form, preparing it for the more detailed shaping to come. At this stage, I stop to take precise measurements. I mark the exact size of the section on the lid that will later fit into the recess we created earlier in the base. This step is crucial. The fit between the lid and the base determines how well the ashtray will function as a whole. With careful marking and attention to detail, I ensure that when the two parts come together, they will align perfectly and sit as one unified piece. To shape this section, I begin with a flat scraper, which allows me to remove material carefully and keep the surface even. Then, I refine the form with the spindle gouge, smoothing the cuts and bringing this part of the lid to its exact dimension. Next, I take time to mark out the size for the chuck jaws. This step will allow me to grip the lid securely from the opposite side later on, so I can finish shaping the top surface. The recess has to be measured and cut with precision, because a solid and accurate hold is essential for safe turning and for achieving a clean, final form. If this part is done correctly, once the jaws are tightened, they will hold the lid firmly without leaving any visible marks on the wood. By preparing this carefully now, I make sure the lid can be reversed and worked on with full stability, while keeping the surface clean and professional looking. At this stage, I measure the size of the opening that will serve as the main hole where the ashes will fall. Accuracy here is important. The opening has to be large enough to be practical, but also well proportioned, so it looks balanced within the lid. Once the dimensions are marked, I use a scraper to carefully cut the opening. The scraper allows me to keep the edges clean and controlled without removing too much material at once. After the basic hole is formed, I switch to the spindle gouge to make the final refining cuts around the opening. The gouge gives me smooth, flowing lines that define the shape more precisely. To finish, I return to the scraper and gently smooth over the surface. This step ensures there are no ridges or tool marks left behind, which means I won't run into problems later when it's time for sanding. A clean surface now makes the whole finishing process much easier and gives the lid a more refined look. With the shaping finished, all that remains is sanding and applying the finish to the lid. I go through the grits just as before, carefully smoothing the surface until it feels even and pleasant to the touch. A well-sanded surface is the best foundation for a strong, lasting finish. For the finish, I once again use our Pipejawood blend of carnauba wax and tung oil. It's important not just to apply it, but to really work it into the wood. I press the finish in firmly, and when I polish with a cotton cloth, the friction creates heat. That heat slightly melts the carnauba wax, allowing it to penetrate deeper into the walnut. This way, the finish bonds better with the surface, giving a richer shine and stronger protection. As the polish is worked in, the walnut begins to glow with warmth, the grain lines standing out more vividly, and the surface gaining a smooth, silky sheen. With the jaws now holding the lid securely in place, I can begin working on the top surface of the ashtray's cover. This is the stage where the lid slowly takes on its final form, and together with the base, the whole piece starts to come alive. I begin by refining the outer profile. Using the spindle gouge and bowl gouge, I remove the flatness and gradually introduce a soft, elegant curve. Each cut is deliberate and controlled. Shaping the lid is not about speed, but about accuracy and flow. The curve should look natural, balanced, and in harmony with the base. As the surface becomes smoother and the form begins to emerge, the true beauty of the walnut starts to reveal itself. For this part, I've chosen a truly beautiful piece of wood. The grain patterns in this blank are exceptional, with flowing lines in contrast that really showcase the character of the walnut. It's one of my favorite woods to turn for this very reason. Every cut exposes new details, and depending on how the light hits the surface, it can shimmer and shift as if it were alive. It feels like the wood is telling its own story, and my task is simply to shape it carefully without disturbing its natural design. This stage is both technical and meditative. The sound of the tool cutting, the curls of shavings falling away, and the lid slowly transforming into a finished form all create a rhythm that makes the process deeply enjoyable. At this stage, I take a few final, careful passes with the scraper. It's not about removing much material anymore, but about refining the surface, smoothing the transitions, sharpening the lines, and giving the lid a clean, professional look. This attention to small details is what separates a rough project from a piece that feels truly finished. At this point, I decide to add a minimal decorative detail, a single, shallow line cut into the surface. It's a small touch, but it adds a personal note to the design, breaking up the simplicity just enough to give the lid more character without overwhelming its natural elegance. With the last details finished and the surface polished, the ashtray is now complete. Looking back at the process, it's incredible to see how far the piece has come. From two simple blocks of walnut, one thinner for the lid and one thicker for the base, I've shaped, refined, and joined them into a single, functional work of art. The outside curves flow smoothly, the base sits stable and balanced, and the raised center inside performs its role perfectly, preventing ashes from being lifted out by the wind. Every element has a purpose, yet at the same time, every detail adds to the overall beauty of the piece. Working through each stage required patience and care. The spindle gouge gave the rough form, the scraper smoothed away imperfections, and the bowl gouge revealed the flowing inner curves. Then came the sanding step by step through the grits, using Klingspor abrasives to achieve that silky surface. And finally, the Pipejawood finish of carnauba wax and tung oil sealed everything, bringing out the rich contrasts and depth of the walnut. The wood itself makes every moment worthwhile. Walnut is never the same. Twice, its grain twists, darkens, and surprises, almost like it has its own personality. Sometimes it reveals straight, elegant lines. Other times, wild swirls that demand a different approach. That's what I love about this craft. The dialogue between the maker and the material, the way each piece guides you as much as you shape it. The inspiration for this project came from something quite simple, a ceramic ashtray I saw at a birthday celebration. That piece stayed in my mind, and I wondered what it would look like reimagined in wood. Now, seeing the finished result, I feel that the idea has taken on new life. The warmth of walnut, the hand-turned curves, and the natural finish all come together to create something both practical and elegant. This project reminds me why I enjoy woodturning so much. It's not just about making objects, but about giving form to ideas, preserving natural beauty, and leaving behind something that is uniquely personal. No machine could ever create the same flow, the same imperfections that make a piece feel alive. Each cut, each curve, carries the story of the process. And now, I'd love to hear what you think. How do you like the final design? Do you enjoy the raised center and the flowing lines of the lid and base? Would you like to see me turn more functional pieces like this, or perhaps experiment with other designs in walnut and different woods? Your thoughts and feedback always inspire me to push further and explore new ideas. If this ashtray speaks to you and you'd like to make it part of your home, you can find it available for purchase on our website, pipejawood.com, or in our Etsy shop under the name Pipejawood. Every piece is handmade, one of a kind, and shipped worldwide with care. By owning one, you're not just getting an ashtray, but a piece of craftsmanship shaped with patience and passion. Thank you so much for watching and spending this time with me in the workshop. I hope you enjoyed following the journey from raw wood to finished piece, and I look forward to sharing more projects with you very soon.